Hey guys, and welcome to episode 3, season 2 of Couch in the Mind, clearing the mind one couch talk at a time. On today's episode, I've got Matt Williams joining me, and we're going to be going over the topic of what comes next. How's it going, brother?
Hey, mate. Lovely to be here. First podcast since being out of the army. So it's an exciting one and maybe a bit more open than some of the other ones I've done recently, at least.
Fantastic. Honestly, it's an honor to have you on the show for what you're going through, for what you've already achieved in your life. I know so many people are going to gain so much out of what you're about to say to me today.
Oh, no, thanks for that, man. It's just me talking a bit of crap, but somehow it resonates with some people. So
And,
I'll
I, and,
take
I,
that. I'll keep
and
doing it.
it's funny you say that, like, it's just me talking crap. I think your approach is so much more engaging to someone being extremely formal, because I find if you can find a lot more relatability out of that, in that if you're just yourself, and this is the way I kind of portray my podcast. If you're just sitting there having a chat with a mate, as opposed to being very, you get your shoulders up and you're very formal and you bring out all these big words, people kind of lose track of what you're saying. But if you kind of say it in a way that maybe in one way you're kind of taking the piss, but in another way it's very laid back and chill, and there's no harm in what you're trying to say and portray. People can find relatability with what you're about to say.
Yeah, I think it comes on sort of knowing where you stand too. Like at the end of the day, I'm one of the boys, just a random fucking bloke on Instagram talking shit. Like it's not like a lot of people try and sound, I think, a lot smarter or a lot more um I guess more dignified than they are, that they're so important. I'm like, well, I'm no more important than anyone, especially anyone in my following. Like, why wouldn't I talk to you like I was just chatting to someone at a pub?
Exactly.
And I was like, I'm one of the boys who's just been in the infantry for 6.5 years. Like, it's not like I've been studying medicine or something. Like, that's all it is. And
Yeah,
if I tried that, man, if I tried that like ultra serious, it'd be a piss take. Like, it just wouldn't be me. And it wouldn't be honest.
it's
And I
just
think a
it's
lot of
just
people
not.
do it
Yeah,
that they're not honest about it, but the formality is just one of those things. But it's easier to take the piss than be super formal, because even if you stuff up something, it's like, well, they're taking the piss anyway. So
there's no harm in stuffing up, and there's no expectancy of how you meant to go about things.
hiding in plain sight, mate. It's always the way.
Yeah, and going back on the topic of today's episode, what comes next? The reason why I've called it that particular name, Matt, is because of what you've gone through. I guess how you've just left the army. You probably don't even know where you're going to head toward in your life.
Mm.
I mean, I don't even know what I'm going to do the next day. I mean, I'm just doing an electrical apprenticeship, but 5 to 6 years down the track, who knows?
Mm.
So we're all kind of playing that guessing game. And then also on the other side of things for yourself, hey, you've got brain tumor. I mean, I'm so sorry to hear that, but for what you're doing, you're so positive and uplifting, and you're great, creating so much awareness of people going through similar situations. I guess not knowing what's coming next, it can be quite daunting, but you're already, people can acknowledge the fact that you're so uplifting through these unanswered questions.
Mm.
And that's pretty much why I've named the topic, what comes next. And I guess where I want to start with this episode is where this fascination of the army came from, for yourself, whether it be, growing up as a child, playing a bit of Call of Duty, or um,
As a
watching,
child, I still do that.
well, there's no reason why you can't play it still. But bit of Drop Zone.
Yeah.
Or watching a bit of Saving Private Ryan. So where did this fascination come from?
See, I'm going to really disappoint your question and go, I don't really know. I had very little family serve in the armed forces, like basically no. Like I had a few people serve, in reserve capacities and whatever, but not in, large capacities. There's guys whose dads are commanding officers and shit, and I'm like the opposite of that. But it was just something I always wanted to do as a kid. Like this, the photo I shared yesterday is me. It was like my first day of like, kindergarten, and I'm dressed up in like army uniform. I think my parents just thought it was a fad and that I'd grow out of it. And next thing I'm 18 in high school, leaving school to go join the infantry, the primary combat arm of the Defence Force. but yeah, on the disappointing note, I don't really know. It was just something I've always wanted to do, and sort of lived and breathed until I was in. I wasn't even a cadet because I think I knew cadets were cringy then. Um, so now it just became a career, and I think that sort of re-identification process will be a hard one because for so long, it was what I wanted to do, and then for so long it was what I did, and now it's like that's what I used to do. What do I do now? How do
Yeah.
I identify myself? Um, so that'll be a big discovery. But yeah, as far as passion to first join, there's all the cliche stuff you'd say at Defense Force recruiting, like, oh, I want to serve my country and this and that. But I don't even think it was that. Like, there's an element of like, serving the nation and, Queen and country and piss. But like, it's just one of those things that people are drawn to. And it's
Yep.
a whole range of everything. It's a job you cannot do anywhere else. And I think that's how a lot of veterans are lost when they leave. There's nothing else like it anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're a truck driver and you lose your job, you can go drive another truck, you can drive a car. There's nothing even close to particularly being an infantryman.
Yeah.
Like there's no part of our job that translates into the civvy world. It's also the reason a lot of infantrymen find themselves, out of work and whatever, because, well, what are you taught? You're taught to shoot and march and do all this stuff. Like it's not exactly the most transferable skill. And many actually say the sort of running joke is it's very transferable into being homeless because we live with a pack on our back, walk around, set up a little sleeping bag and sleep there. It's like you've got all the perfect skills to be homeless as an infantry soldier. Um, but yeah, it'll be a weird process moving on.
One thing I do know for sure, because my first year out of school, I did 6 months of university, and I met someone who was doing sports and physical education with me, whom of which came from the army. He was a commander, and much like what you said, it's very difficult kind of finding out what you want to do when you leave that environment, because I mean, although you build all these skill sets, you can't, some of those skill sets you can't really apply into the outside world.
Mm.
And yeah, that's when he was forced to come back into university at age, I think it was like 32, 33, and start find a degree that would best suit him, and then continue on with that particular occupation.
Mm.
But one thing I do know for sure is that, from what I've been told, that there's quite a strong brotherhood in the army, and one that's quite irreplaceable, and you can't really find that in any other place.
No, not at all. There's nothing else like it, especially as I say, especially your combat corps being, your armored corps, infantry, and artillery. Those sort of things, it's a brotherhood job. The armored corps is probably more so than us in their vehicle crew,
Yep.
because they live and breathe as a crew. A crew, I'd say on a tank, there's a crew of four, where we have sections of 8 or 9, and platoons larger again. But the brotherhood is there. It's because it's not an easy job. You sort of rely on each other. And if you go out field for a month or whatever, it's you and the lads, and that's it. Like my deployment, our base was tiny. That's what wasn't even considered a base. It was a camp,
Yep.
Camp Karga I was on. And there was, I wouldn't even know, I should know, but maybe 20 infantrymen there. And it was, that's it for 9 months. It was the boys, the brotherhood. And there's always this underlying respect, I guess, amongst especially grunts, that even if you don't like the guy, there's a level of respect of what he's done to get there anyway.
100%.
Um, so it's one of those things. And that is, as we we're chatting about before, the thing that guys miss when they leave is just the boys. It's really the only part people miss.
Yeah, 100%, man. And fast forward from finding out, I guess, I mean, you didn't really know where this fascination came from to go into the army, but fast forward from there to then be given the news that you've now got cancer.
Hmm.
How were you given this news, and how did you originally take it?
So I sort of found out, I guess, in a weird way, because I ended up seeing a neurosurgeon. So I'll go back a little bit. I had these headaches at work. So I was
Yep.
back from deployment maybe 2, 3 months ish. It was like late Jan, early February 2018. Anyway, I had these like ongoing headaches and I was like pumping codeine like to get rid of them. But in that like same week is when codeine became like a prescription only drug. And I was like, well, fuck, I'll get kicked out if I get drug tested now.
Yeah.
So I'll go see a doctor. And doctor was basically like, look, mate, it's probably just some stress or whatever. But because you're in the army, it's really easy for us to then refer you out for an MRI, for a CAT scan, sorry. Referred out same day, got a CAT scan, and basically driving home, the bloody like the imaging specialist there calls me like, hey, fucking Matt Williams, I can't tell you anything. I'm not your doctor, but you need to go see him straight away. And on the same day, went back out to the doctor and requested another like emergency MRI. And then that translated into seeing a neurosurgeon who had found like a shady spot in the brain, I guess. I sort of had a guess on, I think this is what it is. And then referred me to an oncologist. And I didn't know what the fucking oncologist was. And I guess my diagnosis came when I'm standing out the front and Google like oncology. And it's like, oh, like cancer doctors. I'm like, oh, shit. Right. Okay.
Shit.
Turns out that's why I'm seeing this dude. And then went down the full path of all the chemotherapy and everything from there. But as far as my response, I think it was a bit of disbelief. That it's like, that's not me. Like it couldn't happen to me. This shit happens in movies and stuff. Disbelief and I guess a bit of fear because like in a movie or whatever, if you hear brain tumor, you're like, oh, that guy's fucked. Like like that's not good. Like that's in your most crucial like element of your body. So it's a very weird thing to sort of face with. But I guess life goes on. The sinking feeling you get, and I guess it's the same as if you break up with like a long-term partner, is from here on, everything that I know has changed. And that's the weirdest thing about like a cancer diagnosis. You walk in the office one person and you leave someone else because everything you know has just been swung 180 degrees because there's no element in my life that's now not influenced. Everything down to like in that situation, my work, my personal life, everything. Say with a cancer like mine, the outcome is the same no matter how you take it. You could be the most serious, sort of pessimist in the world, and your outcome is not going to change from how mine is. It's not going to change. It's just the way it is. There's a guy who talks about his diagnosis with esophagus cancer, and he's like, people that say you fight cancer are full of shit. You don't fight the cancer. Your body does that automatically. Yeah. You have no influence on that. You fight your own mindset and how you respond to the cancer. And it's the most truthful thing in the world.
Fucking very true, mate.
It's just the way it is.
And ultimately, because you know that, we'll put the word terminal down because that's what it is. How do you actually fight your mental demons? How do you keep yourself in such a mental positive headspace? You know, obviously there'll be some mornings where you don't want to wake up and you'll be like, fuck this, I'm over it. I don't want to even think about it. But how do you keep yourself afloat when you're feeling very down?
Yeah, well, it's a weird thing, the whole terminal thing, because everyone's terminal. I'm just dying quicker. Yeah. There's an end for everyone. At some point, it's ending. Hopefully for your listeners and everyone, it's a fucking long time down the track. Those demons in the beginning were, a lot worse than particularly now. I'm pretty good with everything. I think probably the biggest thing I learned was to purpose my life, was to actually have a purpose. Now there's different, of course, people are all different shapes and sizes and go about things a different way, but I'm not a bucket list sort of person. A lot of people think a bucket list is the way to go. It may be for you. But everything in my life I've sort of been and done when I've wanted to do it. Real impulsive for stuff like that. So a bucket list wasn't the way to go because it wasn't changing the way I lived. What I was missing and what got taken from me with my diagnosis was some sense of purpose. And that's where in the beginning, initially, the whole fundraising element was so fantastic for me because it gave me something in my diagnosis I could control it because I couldn't control any other part of it. Not the chemo, not how I felt, not, the prognosis. None of that was within my control. But it is in my control to have a purpose to raise money or raise awareness or anything within that. I had an old military commander when we were over in Afghanistan saying to us all the time, lads, control the controllables, don't think about the uncontrollables. And I was always just like, oh, yeah, fucking whatever, mate. But it became one of those big things that sort of, I finally got it, was I can control the things I can control, and it's not really worth worrying about the stuff I can't.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's fucking sunshine and rainbows. You can go easily back through any of my social medias and find so many days I've been down and can't cope with stuff and whatever. It happens to everyone. It happens to people for no reason. And I think people feel guilty on, they go, oh, fuck. Other people have so much going on. I shouldn't feel like this. And it's just such a bullshit thing. Like one of the things that pisses me off the most is someone messaging me being like, I know it's nothing on what you've got going on, Willie, but I'm really down about this. And I'm like, no. It's a whole way of like you react to things the way you've been exposed to previously. It doesn't mean mine is bigger than yours. People have different reactions to different stuff. I could walk into a combat scenario and be way more comfortable than someone who's not. But then I'd walk into a gaming convention and be that far out of my fucking comfort zone, I wouldn't know what's going on. And it's just, you through your past experiences, sort of build that element of resilience in the place where you're comfortable. That's why it's important to put yourself in situations where you are uncomfortable, because it just grows and grows that element of where you feel comfortable in, what space you are in.
Much like what you're saying now, and I've used this example in a couple of other episodes. Someone might stub their toe in a chair and think nothing of it and just kind of shrug it off and get on with the day, versus someone else, stubbing their toe in the chair and kicking a bit of a fuss and the pains getting to them. Everyone reacts to situations in so many different ways, and I guess, like you said, you kind of build your resilience through that, and with what you're going through, ultimately you're reacting in a different way versus someone else who might be going through a similar experience, and maybe a lot more emotional, or they're struggling to find their purpose throughout
An
that
emotional
situation.
reaction to thing is better than the opposite. You're better off having an emotional reaction to something than nothing.
Yeah.
If you have nothing and you have that sort of dead inside feeling, that's when really alarm bells should start ringing. Because you could have been overexposed or overwhelmed previously. And that's where you have that long-term, because there's short and long-term PTSD. Some of that long-term stuff comes into where people just don't have a reaction to stuff, where they should have one as a human. And that's where, those big issues can come.
Well, that's it. And that's the thing. If you don't ever have a reaction and you kind of just hold everything within yourself, at some point in your life, you're gonna hit a boiling point from something that may be happening, whether it be cancer or you're not agreeing with someone and they're saying something to you and they constantly say it, and you're hitting a point where you go, fuck this, I'm over it. And then you hit boiling point and you just snap. And then from that point, you react in a way that you would never usually react. And sometimes, and this is what I usually call it, the blurry phase, where things happen you don't even know happen, and you sit down and you take a couple of minutes and you start breathing again and you go, holy fuck, did I just do that?
You just see red for a moment and it's just goes downhill. See that with a lot of people who commit suicide. There's no, like, you're like, wait, what happened? And then he killed himself? And you're like, what the fuck? That's nothing. But it's not that. It's that, they've sort of exhausted themselves through so many other things happening and not having an emotional reaction to them on the spot. It's one of those. It's one of those things people just, probably the best thing I've ever done in my life, and probably the biggest thing I, give myself credit for, is building my emotional intelligence. And it's not through, I can't read a book and study, and I surely haven't bloody done that. But it's more exposing myself to such an array of stuff, or having myself exposed to it unwillingly most of the time, that my emotional intelligence, how I'm feeling, has really grown. And I think that I'm very in touch with how I'm going, how I'm feeling, and spotting things that change sort of unconsciously in my behavior and thinking, oh, that means I'm stressed.
Yeah.
Oh, my shoulder's aching. That means I'm stressed. Um, oh, I'm a bit more snappy. Why is this person pissing me off so much?
Yeah.
It's not them. It's that I must be under a bit of stress. What's happening in my life?
Yeah.
Even down to that period, because I have a scan, like an MRI in my head every 3 months. And then I have the results of that in like 2 days after. Those couple of days in between aren't the easiest days because it could go anywhere from, hey, yeah, you got another couple of months, I can go for you, go nuts, or hey, you're dying in a week. That's where the scope of that scan is. Basically, I've sort of come down to there is no logical way I can be like perfect within that couple of days. So for the people that are closest to me, I'm like, hey, probably going to be a fuckwit for the next couple of days. Just don't let me run too wild. Couple of days, get result, all good to go. That and if you have to do that, that's it. If you have to walk into your office or into your home and be like, hey,
Heads
wife and
up.
kids,
Yeah.
this is what's happened. I'm going to need a bit of time with this. There's nothing unhealthy about that. Humans are emotional creatures. It's the reason we're successful, is off finding emotion. The better you are at yours, the better you are at then reading other people's and going, I've just made this guy really uncomfortable here.
Exactly. And along the lines of emotions, coming from that brotherhood in the army, what were they like in terms of opening up and sharing maybe stories of struggle, or reaching out to those when they need, a helping hand? Because for myself, I come from, the trade industry, and, the trade industry is stereotypically known to not open up and to share about these sort of things. We hold that masculine stereotype of, she'll be right, get on with life, and, get on with a job. I wonder if is that the same sort of mentality in the army?
Um, it's really weird. I guess maybe more amongst the junior ranks. Yes. Your 18, 19, 20 year olds.
Yeah.
I've found, as I've got older and gone through my own stuff, uh, it's very open. Like there's not much that's the army has. Well, so an infantry battalion, 600 men. There's nothing that's, censored. Like, you can say and do basically anything you'd want. It's a weird environment, but it's the environment it needs to be for a frontline combat unit too. It's the way it is. And it will never change no matter what, as long as the army's effective, or the infantry is effective, that's going to happen. But on the flip side of that, it's almost opens up this, because nothing is taboo, people will talk about whatever, especially amongst the more senior members. And I think me being open about what I'm going through has opened a lot of doors to people in my sort of inner circle to
Fantastic.
talk to me about, hey, Willie. And I think it's comfortable because they know I'll understand it. But like I know amongst the junior ranks, junior members, like I think I honestly think it's about as good as it's going to get. You're still dealing with 18 or 19-year-old men. That's the way guys are. And it's the way men have been for 10,000 years, and it's the way they'll be for the next 10,000. But I think in that environment, we have every resource available. And, the guys, it's more if someone doesn't want to open up, that it's on them a bit. Like there is not one digger who couldn't have come to me, whether under my command or not, and been like, hey, Willie, this is what's going on. Even if I thought he was the biggest fucking cockhead in the world, it wouldn't matter, because at the same day, we still wear the same hat badge, the same uniform. It's just one of those things. I think, there's a lot of, particularly in your middle ranks, there's a lot of very emotionally intelligent guys due to what they've seen and done and been part of. That they really understand. But there also is then an element of tracking, you're having a hard time. We're still here employed to do a hard job, you know? But as far as, personal issues, I think it's pretty good. There's always room to improve, I guess. But I think between the boys, having that good network of friends is such an important thing. And I think guys, probably the good thing guys are getting better at is seeing, is knowing what signs to look for. We do that mandatory piss take training. Everyone does at the start of the year at any work, where it's, this is alcohol. This is 1 cent drink, and everyone's like, oh god damn. But I I think the most important part of the mental health suicide awareness stuff is seeing those initial things of, hey, if your friend's withdrawn from conversation, who's normally, you know, right up there getting in and this, and you notice those attitude changes and stuff like that. That's when, it might flag an issue. It might then seek to ask what's going on. Um,
Exactly.
so it's one
And
of those
yeah,
things. Yeah.
yeah,
That's why
and
the army has serving members have a significantly lower suicide rate than just civilians in the same. Um,
yeah,
Veterans have a very high suicide rate, guys who then get out of the forces. But
wow.
while serving members it's like the lowest rate in Australia.
And what do you think that?
It really comes down to your place.
Yeah,
There's a fantastic book on this called Tribe, by Sebastian Junger, and he talks about how you know where you stand so much in the army. It has such a strict regimental rank structure. Everything about it is you are here. He is below you. He is above you. You listen to him. This is what happens. These are your mates, your closest mates with you. You do everything together. Um, that's it. And then you leave, and it's like, oh shit, I'm. I don't know where I stand here. What's going on?
yeah. I think structure is so important with life, and
Mm.
like especially in the army, like you said, and for someone who might be interested in going to the gym, I think if you're just going to the gym for pure exercise, it's only good for so long, and then you lose interest, and you kind of sit there and go, why the fuck am I doing this? Is it because of building personal strength, or what is it? And I think if you have like an achievement or something to work toward, or like you said, a bit of structure within your regiment, then ultimately you know why you're there, you know what you need to do, and I guess if it hits the fan, you've done all you could have done.
Mm.
And for yourself now, with regards to your cancer treatment, where are you now? What have you been through to get you to where you are now?
Yeah, so I went through 12 rounds over 13 months of chemotherapy,
Fuck,
on 2018, 2019.
fucking hell.
And now I'm basically watching and waiting the tumor. There's not much more we can do, but a really risky surgery that will most likely paralyze me minimum on my right side. But being also my particular illness is a chromosomal disorder.
Yeah.
Even if they cut out the tumor, it will grow back. So it's sort of like we will give you, if we cut it out, we'll give you a couple more years, probably, most likely. But we might also take your movement. So it sits in that weird structure of, well, do you want us to cut you open, could potentially give you 2 more years or whatever length of time, but we've taken your movement. And it's such a weird thing for the doctors because they're like, it's so hard for us to give you a life expectancy or whatever because they say you got to remember these life expectancies and numbers that Google will spit out, or textbooks will give you are off an average of fucking everyone. They take in the average of a 12-month child with this tumor through an 88-year-old person who's smoked and drank their whole life, dying of it.
Fucking worst case scenario.
Well, we can't, yeah. And they say, well, it gives an average of that. They say to get a 5-year average, someone's probably died in 2 months after it. And to weigh that out, that's probably someone's lived 20 years. They're like, we don't have, some cancers do because they're more common. There's a lot more numbers. But for mine, it's like, we don't have the numbers to tell you what a 24-year-old male who doesn't smoke, who exercises, 5-6 times a week, we don't have those numbers. We don't know whether it's 6 months or 60 years. We don't know. We're taking from a large pool of people. So it's a really weird one, but all we do is, every couple of months in for a scan, have a look, and so far so good. But eventually one day that will start changing.
And for those who may be going through similar experiences that may be listening in right now, how do you stay afloat and get through those days where you don't really want to think about it, but it's on the top of your mind and negativity is kind of getting the best of you?
Well, I guess the way I go about it is not to have that, I don't want to think about it. It is to think about it. And
Okay. Yep.
yeah, this is what's happening. Like, okay, that's going on. What are you going to do about it? What can you do fuck all. Being down about it does nothing for me. And getting up and doing something, whether it's, God, going to work, going to the gym, whatever. Um, I know it sounds like the too easy bitch solution for it of just do, but there is as well no silver bullet cure for being down about something. There isn't, but I sure as hell know it's not pondering on how bad it is. And then, just not doing something. Exercise is a key thing. And it doesn't matter what it is. And it's just going for a walk, whatever,
Yep.
will help you so much. And let you really think about things more clearly. Even if you think, shit, yep, this is what's happening. I just want to stay in bed for 2 days. That's also fine. Make a decision and execute the decision you've made. Don't ponder on what will I do today? Maybe nothing, maybe this. If you're going to do nothing that day, say to yourself, I'm going to do fucking nothing but sit on my phone and watch Instagram fucking reels. Do that. Make the decision that that's what you're doing, execute and fucking do it. Because at least you will have had a small win for the day. Well, I've done something I said I'm going to do. Don't, probably the worst thing to do is get up and go, I'm going to run a marathon today. Something you cannot successfully do. Do something like achievable, which will give you some success. Failure is not a bad thing. I sort of implore anyone who, if anyone would disagree with that, or anyone pretty much in general, there's a US Navy SEAL commander, Jocko Willink. He does a thing on it's like a YouTube clip from his podcast called it's called Good, and it's about like, hey, I failed. It's like, good you failed, because at least if you failed something, if you failed anything, you fucking tried something.
Exactly.
There's plenty of people who never tried in the first place. It's just how it is.
Well, without failures, you can't get better at something that you're ultimately trying to achieve and do. So, yeah, exactly. There's no one fucking in this world that can say to us right now that they haven't failed at something. I mean, if, like you said, if that's the case, it's ultimately because they're probably stayed in their confined space and what they're comfortable with, that what they would usually do, versus kind of stepping out of their comfort zone, giving something a go, ultimately maybe failing because they didn't get to where they wanted to be, but they've given it a go. Like you said, there's no rush, just baby steps. Like you could go from running 3 to 4 kilometers where you wanted to get to 6, but 4 nights time you could get to the 6 kilometer mark. So there's no rush, and without failures you can't ultimately push yourself and get to where you want to be.
And the most successful people have the most failures too. Look at someone like, big names like Elon Musk or Donald Trump or whoever, let alone what you fucking think of them. The amount of failures they've had is way more than fucking most average people. That's why they're not average people. That's why they're ultra successful. They've had so many failed business or failed ideas or whatever. Most people have, a few large failures in their life, where you find these ultra successful people have so many of them. But that's the thing, is they're not scared to go into something thinking this may not work. And people go in and sometimes it works for them.
Exactly. And kind of going back on to track of your own, I guess, battle that you're facing right now. I did see on your Instagram bio, you had redefining terminal illness. The word redefining, where does that come from?
Well, I think there's, especially with things like brain tumors, cancers, whatever you want to call it, there's this sort of cookie cutter thing that people think, well, you're fucked. Like, that's it. Life ends at that diagnosis in that sterile white room with an oncologist or a surgeon, and that's it. And I sort of think, well, no, it doesn't. You can still find success. You can still do stuff. You can still laugh and have fun. Life still moves on. Yes, it might be shortened, but, I want to change the way people see what you can do with an illness like this. That doesn't define everything from your future. That's only a part, and then everything else, you can still achieve and do shit. And I'm it's somehow I've got a large following, but there's a lot of people in my following dealing with similar or worse conditions than mine that are fucking so much better at it than me, that I look at like, holy shit, you know, like during chemo for the first couple of months I worked out, but then after that I just had nothing in the tank. They were still way more than me, and shit like that. It's just like the amount of people who are just changing the way that cancer's seen is just bloody incredible. And if I can have a fucking 0.1% influence on that, that's fantastic for me.
Mate, there's a reason why you've got all the followers because of just how open you are to be able to share your story of struggle. Like fuck man, you'd be helping so many people going through similar situations. Usually, someone who may be going through such a tough time, they'll watch the video, they'll read the articles, but they'll never reach out. I mean, they might reach out to say thank you for sharing, but they wouldn't usually talk about their own personal struggle because some people find to be quite embarrassing to do it, and I don't know why. But everyone struggles at some point in their life, whether it be through an illness, through their own mental state. No one should struggle. We're all here for each other, and that's what we've got to learn to do, just to open up when we actually have to do, and find help, whether it be medical help or talking to one of the boys in the army or reaching out to your family and friends.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, you hit the nail on the head.
And I guess as a summary for the episode of what comes next, if we go back to the name, what comes next, if you face something and you don't really know, I guess, where it's heading, whether it be for your situation or you might be in a workplace and you're not treated well, and you don't know whether to leave or not because of finding a new occupation, or your mental state of mind, you don't know how you're going to get better because of you're in this state of mind where you just feel like as if nothing else is going to help you out and flip this mindset into something positive. For the people listening in, how do you actually do that and find that light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, there's a couple of things in that that I'll sort of disseminate. Mental health with cancer is, I think, a little bit different in the way of a lot.
Yeah.
Say with me, if I could walk away from my cancer, I fucking would. I think a lot of people have a lot of problems, and I'm not saying their problems are small, but I think the steps they take aren't big enough to cure that problem.
Yep.
If you're going to work every day and you hate it that fucking much, walk out the door. Tell everyone to stick it up their ass and walk out. If you're going to fucking kill yourself for $20 an hour, fuck that. Walk out. It's Australia. They can't put a gun to your head. They can't do it. Same as in the army with your minimum period of service, your 4-year sign-on. If you go to your senior chain of command and are like, I cannot do this anymore. That can all be waived. We've done it before. I've seen it done many a time for serious stuff. It's the way it is. If your relationship is pissing you off, if your missus or husband or whatever is pissing you off that much, you're going to fucking kill yourself. Walk out. Walk away from it. And I sort of say to people, if I could walk away from it, I would. But it's something I can't do. And we tried to walk away from it through treatments and whatever. Can't do it. That's the big thing is if you can take for a small issue, big issue, if you need to make a radical change, it's worth it. You have such a finite amount of time in the planet, especially if you're younger, of years where your glory days are so fucking tiny. It's not worth, if you can change it, it's not worth stressing over it. If you can walk away from it, absolutely. There's also an element too of what comes next that I guess almost comes into a very well-known sort of army special forces saying of being comfortable in chaos. And that is what, if the special forces do anything better than the rest of the army, leave skills behind. The skills are the same as the regular army is taught, but they just have so much more time on the tools doing it.
Yeah.
And so much more funding. So of course they, and then that next level. of training, and the Australian Special Forces are the best in the world. But probably the biggest mindset change that, I've seen doing minimal work with them is that comfort in chaos, and being comfortable in something that you don't know what is happening next, but you're along for the ride no matter what, and taking the steps of setting yourself up for success into that chaos. So, you're going into an attack, you're landing on the ground, you don't know what the fuck you're about to walk into. Well, what steps can I take to minimize how chaotic this is going to be? Okay. Well, fuck. Check your weapons fucking loaded. Check you got your gear, your fucking night vision works. Your boys are there. You know what okay, we're jumping off, the back of this vehicle and you're going left and I'm going right. And my section's going, yep. And that's control the controllables. Goes into the comfortable and chaos. What happens next is going to happen next, no matter what. You might step out straight into a landmine and get blown up. That might happen, or maybe everything will go perfectly. There's a level of what will happen next is going to happen fucking either way. And with me, I guess back to my illness, every time I have the scan, it could be terrible news and I've got a week to live. It's taken over half my brain. But there's an element of, well, I'm not going to change that. I still have a scan every 3 months. I still have this. There's an element of rolling with the punches with stuff too.
Yep.
And there's an element of things that happen no matter what without you involved. It doesn't matter what you do. The sun's coming up tomorrow.
It's one of those things where you're going to take and play that, if you're working in an environment where you fucking hate it, just, do what you need to do. If you need to fuck off, do it. And ultimately, if that was the worst, decision that you've ever made, your fucking life's not going to fucking end or anything. You could just get on with it and do what you need to do.
Plenty of people have done far stupider things.
Thank you. Thank you so much for today, brother. I really appreciate what you have to share. It's honestly truly inspirational for what you're still going through and how uplifting you are for the scenario you're being faced and how you're giving back to the community and spreading awareness for people going through the same situation.
Oh, it's a pleasure, mate. No, thanks for having me. And I'm glad we could have a quick turnaround on when we did this. It was only like last week we spoke about doing it, and it was like, let's get it out. And,
thank you so much.
I'd like to have a chat to you, man.
Another just a quick question. I saw that you're based in Adelaide. Do you happen to follow the AFL at all?
The AFL, very, very little, not much at all. My missus does a shitload, but I have no idea.
I was going to say that if you're a Crows supporter, I might have to reconsider putting this episode up.
Nah, originally I was from childhood an Essendon supporter, but now I'll just go for whoever looks like they're going to fucking win.
Mate, just as long as you don't go for the Crows, you'll be in the good books.
Yeah, no, that's all good.
Thanks, mate. But this has been episode 3 of season 2. Catching the mind, what comes next. And today I had Matt Williams on the show with me. So if you guys want to reach out to him, I'll put his social media feed in the link below. And as always, if you have any questions or need to speak to me about anything, just hit me up on the Couch to Mind Facebook page. Have a fantastic rest of the week, lads and women. And I'll speak to you guys soon. Catch you later.